Recording in progress.
A very bright and blissful good morning to everyone. Indira Gandhi Center for Human Ecology, Environmental and Population Studies, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur, in association with Academy of Physical Sciences, Prayagraj, welcomes you for International Conference on Ecosystem Restoration and Environmental Sustainability, Concerns and Alternatives. Due to an exam in Rajasthan, there are some participants who will be facing issues in connecting with us because of the internet. So hopefully they'll join us in later evening, but we'll continue with our program. And so I would like to welcome Dr. Anil Shrestha, who is chairperson of Department of Viticulture and Enology. He is professor of weed science in California State University. He works directly with Viticulture and Enology Research Center, the University Agriculture Laboratory, and the grape and wine industry. Before joining the Department of Viticulture and Enology, Dr. Shrestha taught in plant science department and was involved in several viticulture research projects at Frenso State. His research interests include weed biology and ecology, crop weed competition, agroecology, conservation tillage, IPM, and organic farming. I would request Dr. Shrestha to address the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. If you could please allow me to share my screen, that would be helpful. Can you please allow me to share my screen?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for providing me this opportunity to present here. And I'm a weed science person and my area of expertise is weed science. But I thought for a meeting like this, if I made it just weed science and talked about my research, it would be very boring. So I kind of thought, like a general topic, and I will talk about the global pesticide use in agriculture and how it affects the environment and human health. So this is a general kind of a lecture providing you an overview and also about my opinion, my personal opinion on why I think the way the world is going is how I'm going to present here and what it means to us. So if you kind of think about it, up to the 1980s, the goal of agricultural research was mostly about, how do we maximize the crop yield? How do we maximize farm profits? And the ultimate goal was to feed the worldwide population. Me, myself, when I was a student in India, doing my bachelor's degree in agricultural sciences, we only talked about how to maximize the crop yield and how to maximize the profit. But we didn't really talk about other issues that we see today. Whereas in the West, in the Western countries, the progress of agriculture in the modern agriculture that I'm going to mention here, we saw a lot of expansion of monoculture. It was just wheat or maize or something like that. And with that sort of approach, the varieties that were developed were very responsive to nitrogen or pesticides. So they relied a lot on those kinds of inputs to give us maximum yield and profit. So people started growing those crops as monocultures. So we saw our first wave of environmental problems, and we call it ecological diseases. And that was mostly with soil erosion. And slowly we saw the second wave of environmental problems with pesticides in the environment, nitrates in groundwater. So the West saw these problems a little ahead of other countries in the world. So if you look at the global agriculture, I think we have now completed a learning cycle in agriculture. We started off with natural ecosystems where there were plant communities, and with human intervention, we cleared those areas, and then we developed what we call agroecosystems. And as the population grew and societies developed, our goal was to maximize crop yields. And me, myself, when I was a student, as I said, we only used to talk about maximizing crop yields. But with that approach, the West, we've seen that there are a lot of environmental and health issues with that approach. So now, I think it was in the early 90s, the Western world started talking about developing environmentally safe, socially acceptable, and economically viable systems. And in essence, this is what we call sustainable agriculture. So that was in the early 90s. And we went as far as getting the knowledge from the natural systems and putting them in agroecosystems to see if we can farm sustainably. So we are in the West are in that phase of the learning cycle. But if you look throughout the world, many countries are in many of these phases. Some countries are still trying to maximize crop yield. Some are further ahead, and some are at a saturation point where they think the only way to farm is organic. So we see these things happening in the world. The other thing that is very well known to us is that the world population is growing, and I don't have to show this graph because we all know that it is going to be close to 9 billion or something in the next few years. Now, when you look at ways to feed the growing population, there's only two ways. Either we got to increase the yield per unit of land, or we got to bring in more land into agricultural production. So that's like, in a nutshell, in summary, how we can feed the world. Or in a side note, you could either reduce food waste in these developed countries, and also the distribution of food, I think, is not proper. So you will see papers saying that, we have enough food in the world, but the distribution is not good. So you have those kinds of sentiments as well. And if you look at the data for the last 20 years or so, most of the yield increase has come from improving the yield, and a little bit from area expansion. So SSA means Sub-Saharan Africa, LA means Latin America, West Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia. You can see that most of the yield increase in South Asia has been through yield improvement, but in Sub-Saharan Africa, they're still bringing in more land into production. So that's like what's happening, but the land that is suitable for agriculture is declining, right? So it's declining, our population is growing. So that cannot go on forever. We cannot increase the area under cultivation forever. The other disturbing thing that has happened is if you look at the three graphs here, this is the world, this is from 1960 to 1980s. The annual percent yield increase was about 2.5%, but 89 to 94, now it is below 2%, and now it's close to 1%. So we have almost stagnated in terms of yield increase as well. So now we are talking about how do we increase agricultural productivity, and here it says here, we are supposed to get more and more yield with the efficient use of resources. And they have come with a new term called total productivity factor. So here we are talking about increasing yields with more efficient use of agricultural inputs. And the other thing that they have looked at is this thing called total factor for productivity. And if we don't increase the total productivity by 1.73%, there will be shortage. So we got to meet that productivity goal while keeping the inputs at 2010 level. So the goal is not to increase the inputs in agriculture. So this is what the economists are saying. But again, as I said, if you look at the increase in yield, this is data from United States Department of Agriculture. This is International Agricultural Productivity data. You can see that we have almost stagnated in improvement of total farm productivity. It is in fact going down in the recent years. And as I said, we are increasing land, but only in certain areas of the world. In other areas of the world cannot increase the area under agriculture. And meanwhile, the consumption of food is also increasing. And you can see here that by 2030, India and China will have about 40% of the global middle class. And that means, the middle class are getting more affluent, they're eating more food, and they have the ability to buy more food. So the consumption is going up. So the diets are also changing. So that's also happening, which is putting a pressure on the demand for food. And there was a report, I just saw this from India, that global agricultural productivity is not growing as fast as the demand. So we know that this is very recent. You can see that it's dated 21st October 2021, and this is from India. So now FAO has said that the only way we can meet the goal of the world food demand is by intensifying agriculture. So this word, agricultural intensification, is being promoted. But then the people say, wait a minute, we can't just increase agriculture intensification. It has to be sustainable. So there's a new term called sustainable intensification. And it's quite ironic that there's another report that came out in 2014, and it said sustainable intensification is not sustainable. And how they define sustainable intensification is the process of enhancing yields with minimum environmental impact and without expanding the existing agricultural land base. So what does this mean? To me, this is, you need more inputs, more pesticides to reach that goal, right? So this is why I think the pesticide use may increase globally. I may be wrong, but I hope I'm not, misleading you, but this is what I feel after looking at what has happened in the last 20 years, 25 years. So in the GAP report, they say that by 2030, sub-Saharan Africa will only meet about 8% of its food demand. South Asia will meet only about 25% of its food demand through productivity growth. So the question is, how are countries going to manage this? And I saw this on other report that said, by 2050, almost half of the world is going to rely on import of crops. And I looked at this report, and my question was, okay, so who's going to be exporting the food? So who are going to be exporting the food? Which countries are going to export the food? Now, you may think, the developing countries might increase their production and they might export food, but this is what is happening in developing countries. Nobody wants to stay in the farm. All the people are, most of the young people are moving out of farming because farming is not a easy profession and it's not a profitable profession. So they want to go to the cities. So if you go to some of these countries, I don't know how the situation is in India, but I've been in many countries where you only see children, women, and old people who are left in the farm to do the job. So what has happened is, if you've noticed that by mid-2009, when the population was about 6.8 billion, for the first time, there were more people in the urban areas than the rural areas. And the UN is predicting by 2050, 66% of the world's population will be living in urban areas. So there is that movement of people from rural areas to urban areas, and rural areas primarily mean farmers, right? So people are giving up their profession. And you will see these international agencies working in these developing countries saying, we cannot afford to lose this. So we have to make farming profitable. So let's make commercial farming a goal. So this is from Nepal. So, there's the goal of making farming commercial. And you'll see this even with the IFPRI report, International Food Production Research Institute, that we have to move from subsistence to profit, and we have to transform smallholder farmers. So same thing here from the World Bank, that they also say we got to commercialize farming. So now my question is, as an agronomist, agriculture is a risky business, right? It is a risky business because we have all kinds of pests. We have insects, we have fungus, we have weeds, we have bacteria, we have all kinds of other diseases, nematodes, vertebrate pests. So how are we going to do all the management of these pests without pesticides is the question. Okay. So when I mean pesticides, I mean in general, not just the chemicals, but organic pesticides as well are pesticides, right? So how do we do that? Because farming at the end of the day has to be profitable. So pests will not just go away on their own, and we need something to control them. So I'm now speaking from a farmer's perspective, that we as researchers debate. We say we should not use pesticides, we should use pesticides, we should go organic farming. But at the end of the day, farmers are the ones who have to make a profit, and they are the ones who have to stay in the farm to produce. So they are confused with us researchers sometimes debating, right? So if you look at the world data, 40% of the crop yield would be lost if there were no pesticides or some sort of pest control system. Okay, so in the 1940s, we had the first chemical pesticides come into the market, and the developed countries, they started using pesticides, and that is how they progressed to where they are now. Now you must be aware that many of these pesticides share the same chemistry as human medicine. I myself take blood pressure medication, and it's a sulfonylurea, and sulfonylurea is also an herbicide that I work on. So, sometimes it makes me wonder. And here's the data from the US. US saves about $60 billion in crop losses by using pesticides. Okay, so, if it wasn't the case, they wouldn't be able to produce as much as they are doing. And the economics says that for every $1 you spend on pesticides, you get $6.5 in return. So that's the data that they have produced. And we as consumers, we also do not want a fruit like this with insects in them, right? So how do we get rid of the insects? Some sort of a pesticide or some sort of a pest management strategy. This is strawberry with fungus. We don't want to eat them, right? So the growers cannot sell this type of produce with diseases. We as consumers are used to seeing and getting and preferring these type of clean looking products. So how are farmers going to produce this without some sort of a help in terms of pest control? It's almost impossible. So farmers are in a dilemma. So I say, we cannot blame farmers for using pesticides. They are there for some, making livelihoods, and they have to sell their produce. So that's the problem we face. And so when I go to these places, and the only question I get when I go to Nepal is nobody asks me about ecological pest management methods. Nobody asks me about organic pest management methods. They only ask me what type of pesticide should I spray. So the farmers are asking those types of questions, right? So although I'm supposed to be an ecologist and I work on alternate pesticides, that's the only question I get. And the reason is they are facing all kinds of new diseases and insects all the time. This is in Nepal, and this farmer can no longer, he has these greenhouses, the hoop houses to grow tomatoes. He can no longer farm his tomatoes because of pests. And the area is supposed to be organic, so he cannot spray pesticides. So he's kind of frustrated. Same thing in this area of Nepal, where they go cabbage, right? So that's the only crop they grow, and they grow 2 seasons of cabbage in 1 year. And I asked them, like, why do you do that? They said that is the only crop that makes money. Anything else is not profitable. So what has happened is if you grow cabbage all the time, you have these diseases. The easy solution is not to grow cabbage, but they said, no, cabbage is the only crop that makes money. Give us a pesticide that will control this. So you see the sentiments of the growers and the farmers, they have that problem, right? Same thing here. I was visiting a rice field in Nepal, and it was full of these aquatic weeds. And he was hand weeding, this farmer was hand weeding, and he said, whole day it took him to take that out. And that was only about 10% of his field. So he says, give me a weedicide, a herbicide. I don't want to deal with alternate types of control. Same thing with Africa. Half the crops, half the fields in Africa are full of weeds, and they just have to pray to God to help them. And there was a paper that came out saying, add herbicides to Africa's rescue plan. Now, is that a good idea or a bad idea? I'm not going to go there. And I'll make that point later in the talk. The reason the West has been using pesticides is because there are economic benefits. As I said, for every dollar you put into pesticide, your output is like $3 to $6. And in the process, consumers are getting cheaper food. And that is why organic food costs more, because they cannot use those cheaper pesticides. Pesticides also are preventing the loss during food and transport, during transport and storage. Otherwise, we would lose 50% of the crops during transportation. And pesticides can improve food quality, like I showed you, like the clean crops that we prefer. And pesticides can also eliminate health risks to human. Now, this is debatable, but that's what you see on the list of pesticide impacts if you look at literature. So I think, in my personal opinion, that the era of chemical pest management has begun globally. Do we stop them? Can we stop them? Is the next question. Okay, so even in Nepal, like this is one area I used to work. This is a tea garden. Now they spray 3 to 4 times a year for weeds. And they do it because there's no more labor to hand pull the weeds. So they are, at a loss for controlling weeds. So when you go to these areas, this is what you see. Just a few people spraying pesticides, mixing pesticides, and spraying on the tea gardens. The other thing that has happened with all these, foreign projects going into the developing countries is they have created that commercial farming that I said, from moving from subsistence to commercial, and they have created these middlemen. Okay, so not they have created, but the process has created these middlemen. We have these agrovets selling pesticides, we have those traders, and then we have private sector. So the gap between the farmer and the consumer is increasing day by day with all these people that are middlemen now. And these middlemen are there for profit. So, like when you have these middlemen, and if you look at the data, this is from 2012, but if you look at India itself, herbicide use grew by 35% in 2012 because of lack of labor, and it's even more now. I couldn't find the latest data, but it's even more now. China, India, Bangladesh are now the hotbeds for herbicide use. But the other thing that I've noticed is the chemical sale agents are ahead of the government agents in promoting pesticides. So they are very active in doing that. And this is one of the stores in Nepal, which is an agrovet store selling pesticides. And I saw that this store, there was like a 16-year-old boy selling pesticide. So untrained people are running these stores and they're selling pesticides. So the people there, the pesticide folks are way ahead of the government folks, and they are promoting it. And farmers realize that these things work. That's the bad thing about pesticides. They do work, right? and they kill the pest that they're supposed to kill. So that is the problem. So once you, why do farmers use nitrogen now, urea now? Because they know it works, right? So it increased the yield. So now once they know that it works, they don't want to give it up. So that's the other problem. And you see these agents going around and convincing farmers with pesticides. So this is happening. And the farmers trust these people more than the government agents, because the government agents do not have anything to give them. And these people give them t-shirts, hats, pesticides, and life goes on, right? So in the world, if you look at this, the use of pesticides has gone up. Only Europe is kind of stable, and they have a very strict mandate on pesticide use. Look at Asia, it's gone up. Even the US has gone up. And on a per country basis, China is the one that uses the most pesticides in terms of total pesticide use, and India is there in the top 10, right? So then I also saw, on a per acre basis, which countries use the most. And I wasn't sure why Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island in the West Indies, uses so much pesticides per hectare. So it may be because they're a small country and they have intensive tropical agriculture that they do use pesticides. That could be the cause. But on a per acre basis, India is not on the top. So it's not in the top of the list. Now the industry itself, the pesticide industry is about a $70 billion industry. And by 2022, it's supposed to be 90 billion. So the growth rate of pesticides is around 7%. And they're saying that Asia Pacific will have the highest growth rate. So that's like the market and the industry's focus, but we have to be aware. I did present why people use pesticides, but we have to be aware that there are consequences to pesticide use. And pesticides, when we spray them, get distributed either in the water or the air or the soil or in living organisms, right? So there are negative effects, and we have to realize that there are health issues, residues in food, contamination of water, air, soil, and all sorts of issues. But the biggest issue that we are working on in the US is now resistance. Many of these pests are becoming resistant to pesticides, and I'm working on resistance to herbicides. And in the 60s, you probably heard of Rachel Carson. She introduced, it was because of her that we have all these new regulations around pesticide use. And that book, Silent Spring, promoted that. And we have all kinds of cases, herbicide atrazine, which is used a lot in India. This is data from, I don't know which country it was, but they have some evidence that the atrazine is turning male frogs into females. Now this is debatable. There's always, debates in research. But pesticides also affect the biodiversity, environment, and other things. So there are negative consequences, and we've seen so many diseases related to human health, all the way from cancer to reproductive health and neurological effect. So there are negative sides to pesticide. I think in any word that ends with CIDE, side, something is dying. Homicide, suicide, something is dying, right? So something is dying with pesticides. And I just want to give you a little, background on the pesticide industry also, why pesticides are so expensive. Only 1 in 20,000 chemicals make it from the lab to the field. And it costs about an average $256 million in developing one pesticide. And these pesticides here in these countries have to go through almost 120 different tests to make sure they're healthy and safe. It takes about 8 to 10 years from discovery to registration. So if you discover something today, you're only looking at 2030 before it's registered. And the patents last for 17 years. So if I apply for a patent today, if I discover something new, that patent is good for 17 years. But it takes me almost 10 years to bring that product into the market. So I only have about 7-8 years remaining to make money out of it. So that's why they are expensive. And once you get the generic versions, when the patent runs out, then it becomes cheaper. So the companies, they target around $100 million a year of total global sales before they think this should be brought into market. So that's their goal. And they go through almost 120 different studies to look at risk assessment, cancer assessment, all of these things. So, when people say pesticides are not safe, you have to be aware that they do go through all that review process. It's not just you make a pesticide and sell it in the market. There's all kinds of review process before it is allowed to be registered. We look at the residues in the food, and each country has their own maximum residue limit. Some countries that don't have the maximum residue limit, they use the limit set by WHO. But here is the other thing: these developed countries have very strict pesticide regulations and very strict monitoring, very strict evaluation, and very strict enforcement. Here in California, I'll tell you the story of how we are allowed to use pesticides here. So, how is California the most productive agricultural state in the world? No doubt, we use pesticides, right? So we do use pesticides, but it is very regulated, it's very highly monitored, and we have the strictest regulation system in the world. We have what we call the pesticide use reporting system. Every gram of pesticide that a farmer uses has to be recorded. Every week they have to file a report of how much pesticide they are using. So this started in 1990, and every month they have to submit the report to the Agricultural Commissioner's office. And farmers cannot use the pesticides on their own. It has to be recommended by what we call a pest control advisor. The person has to pass the state license, and most of the pest control advisors have at least a bachelor's in agriculture degree. So it's just like doctors prescribing medications. So same thing here, it's very strict. So you can actually go to the, each county and see what is being used and what is the amount. It's all, you can see it in GPS systems and all. So we keep track of all these. By we, I mean the government of, state government of California. It keeps track of all these pesticides. What is the use trend of reproductive toxicity kind of pesticides? What is the use trend of cancer-causing pesticides? And you can see that it has not decreased. You can see the trend line, right? But we have these records of all different toxic pesticides, groundwater problem-causing pesticides, air contaminating pesticides. All of this is recorded and it's regulated. So the government tries its best to reduce the use of this pesticide and promote what we call safer, reduced risk pesticides. Okay, so if you are trying to get a registration for a reduced risk pesticide, the process of registration is quicker than the other chemical pesticides. So the biopesticides are now increasing in California. Okay, so we keep track of all this. So we have what we call the California Department of Pesticide Regulation. Their only work is to regulate pesticides. Each of the counties have, government agents who are inspectors. They inspect the field, they inspect the farmers, they inspect the markets to see if pesticide regulations are being violated or not. And they can get jail term, fines for misusing pesticides. So all the markets are monitored very regularly. The food is monitored very regularly. The water is monitored very regularly. Air is also monitored very regularly. And they give us reports like this, that the pesticides levels are below health concerns. Those kinds of reports come out all the time. The other thing that is happening is in the developing world, in the US and in developed worlds, we are using more safer pesticides, but that's not true in the developing world. In the developing world, the use of more toxic pesticides have not decreased. In fact, it's increasing. So that's something disturbing. And if you see pesticides being applied in this part of the world, they look like as if they're going to the moon. That's so much protected, right? But if you go to, this is in Nepal, and this person here is spraying pesticide, and you can see that the person has no protection at all. So this is something that the governments have to educate the farmers, that you have to do something to protect yourself, right? So that's one story. The other story is pesticide resistance. Because of all the pesticides we've been using and repeatedly using the same thing, we have all kinds of resistant pests. So the question is, can we fight nature? Because they develop resistance. So if you look at the data, there are all kinds of weeds that are resistant to herbicides, all kinds of insects that are resistant to insecticides, fungi resistant to fungicides. So it's increasing, and it's increasing in a very alarming trend. If you go to a weed science meeting in the US, most 75% of the talk is about herbicide resistance. So, and not just these pesticides, even antibiotics. I don't know if you've seen this report that came out in 2015, there is certain bacteria that are resistant to all antibiotics we have discovered so far. So why? Because we use antibiotics every time, even if you have a cough or a cold, the doctor just writes a recommendation for antibiotic. So this is causing problems. The other thing is this global debate. Some people say ban pesticides, go to organic. Some people say organic agriculture cannot save the world, genome editing can. So these debates are going on between researchers. Farmers don't care about these debates. And even Sikkim, I was looking at data for Sikkim in India, which is supposed to be the first organic state in India. But now it's also facing uncertainties of whether that will be possible or not. So here's my point. Farmers need solution, not debates. You cannot, make them organic versus pesticides. For them, they need control, regardless of whether it's organic or conventional. And they have to be reliable and consistent. Okay, so you cannot have a product that works only 1 year and not the other year. They have to be economic, they have to be profitable, and they have to be user-friendly, right? So that is because farmers are the real stewards of the land, not policymakers. So I find this, I work in both the chemical pesticides and organic as well. I work in both, but I haven't taken sides that this is bad and this is good. I know there are certain bad things in pesticides, a lot of bad things in pesticides, and a lot of good things in organic, but for farmers, it's all about profit, right? They have to be profitable to stay in the business. The other thing is, if you don't use pesticides at all, whether it's organic or any other thing, these plants themselves produce chemicals to protect themselves. And they are dangerous as well. You probably have heard of, don't eat green potatoes because it's poisonous. That is because the potato is trying to build a chemical to protect itself from pests. So that's also one of the things, even in beans, you see that. So my point is, and I'm getting to the concluding side of things, there are opportunities for research in traditional pest management practices, especially in a country like India and South Asia. There were a lot of traditional methods that got lost. The reason it got lost is because of the Green Revolution that promoted rice and wheat that responded to nitrogen, that responded to pesticides. So what did the farmers do? They gave up all the traditional crops and they started growing rice and wheat, which was not the diet in many of the countries. Even in Nepal, the diet was amaranths and all those millets. Now, if you go to the villages, they want basmati rice or something like that. So, we had all these crops that were climate resilient, they were pest resilient, but we lost them because our focus was on the modern agriculture. And we started following the developed countries with their practices, right? So there's still tremendous opportunity in minor crops and traditional crops. So my recommendation is, there should be, if we use pesticides in these developing countries, they should be very regulated. And if commercial agriculture is to be promoted, farmers should be well trained on the proper use of pesticides. In the meantime, we as researchers have to be fast in finding alternatives to pesticides. We can't just, debate and say, don't use pesticides and go organic. It has to be profitable to the farmer. So there is an urgent need to find systems that work, alternates. So we have to look at these alternate crops that we had. And agriculture should be based on each country's own ecology. You can't just follow other countries in this process. I found this nice quote from National Geographic that says, in the next green revolution, they're talking about the next green revolution. The first green revolution was in the 60s, right? The main challenge for agricultural researchers facing in helping farmers is not in creating low-tech or high-tech solution to the problems, but in providing appropriate knowledge that works and is useful to farmers on the land they farm. And I would like to end with this slide. This is what they mean by, user-friendly, appropriate tools. So this lady is using this machine. She's wearing a sari, and it's not an appropriate technology for the growers, for the farmers. So, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and take questions if you have any. And I hope I was able to give you a broad picture of why I feel the way I do, and why I think we may see an increase in pesticide use unless we develop good, reliable organic methods. Thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, congratulations for such an enriching lecture.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was really, you've given such a information. Thank you so much. It's nice hearing you. Yeah.
Yeah, we never think from a farmer's perspective.
Yes. Very true.
Once we get our PhDs, we think we know the best.
Yes,
right?
yes. Very right. Yeah, that's very right. What they have to do with the scientific degrees and all. They want implementation part, which they have to practice still. Thank you so much, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening and informative session. We hopefully will find better ways to manage pests, which can benefit our farmers and consumers as well. Now, our second guest, Dr. Neelam Mattu, has been professor since 1990 in Department of Bioscience, Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla. Her research work mainly pertains to honey and honeybees of Northwest Himalayas. She is recipient of Senior Scientist Award and is life member of many academic societies, including AAA Japan. We welcome you, ma'am, and I would kindly request you to deliver your talk. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarva Kareshu Sarvada. Distinguished eminent personalities, globally renowned, great people sitting here, and my dear friends. A very good morning to all of you. I welcome you all to second day of deliberations during international conference. Friends, I come from Shimla, Himachal Pradesh, which is a beautiful city amidst wonders of nature. It is known as the abode of Lord Shiva, and at every peak of snow-laden mountains, we offer and we find goddesses residing over there, which are conserving the biodiversity over there. You must have heard about Max Muller, a German Orientalist. He has even written sacred books of East, 50 volumes he has written, and he had been a great scholar for Indian studies, and he translated Upanishads also into German. Once one of his students asked him that what is the significance of our life? Why we are existing? How we'll maintain this? How sustainability matters to us? And Max Muller pointed towards the northwest Himalayas of the world and told him that if you really want to have your answers, the answers are hidden in the higher peaks of Himalayas, in the lush green meadows over there, in the sparkling rivers, and in the flora and fauna richness of nature. You can find your answers over there. So that is very, very true. Still, we have quite much of the biodiversity intact in our Himalayan region. And friends, if you happen to go to the parliament of a country, you'll find a on the main entrance gate, there is a phrase engraved, which goes like, Ayam Vayam Paroveti Garna Nichet Sam Udar Chita Nam Tu Vasudaiva Kutumbakam. So I welcome you all to this family of God. Now we all know that the one word, one family, we all belong to each other. We are living together under a single umbrella. Here we are living with our cattle, whether our cow, our buffaloes, our dogs, our pets, our butterflies. And in this big family, bees, they occupy a very, very higher space. And we know that bees are very tiny creatures, but they are very, very eco-friendly. The bees, they work all through the day, right from early hours in the morning up to late hours in the evening, working on the principle, Udyamena hi siddhanti, karyani namanorthai, nahi suptasya sihasya pravishati mukhimriga. That is, hard work is the key to success. Such a message is given by our little friends. And these bees, they are not only the producers of honey, which is the golden wonder, but they are useful to us for many, many other reasons also. They give us so many high products. Then their use in bioprospecting is very well known. And in pollination services, they rank very, very high, as the crops are improved and increased by more than 70% by the pollination services of our bees. 1 in 3 bites of food we eat daily, that comes from these little eco-friendly creatures. Friends, the bees, they have been working on the essence of Gita. Karmande vadika raste mafuleshu kadachana. That is, we the bees work but for others. So what is the essence of Gita? That tells us that we have right to our actions, but not to the fruits of actions. So this we have to learn from our little friends. And you know, about when we call about honey, which is better to be enjoyed than described, it is full of many, many, many properties. And rather we can say that it's a power pack of qualities. You know, now as the winters are approaching, all of the winter-borne diseases like sore throat or cold or and cough, they all could be cured by using honey. And it is immunity booster. You can have a spoon of honey daily before going for a morning walk, and it is also used by the sportsmen, and it's a food for our infants, our young friends, then then our old parents, as well as our sportsmen. It not only helps strengthen our cardiac muscles, but also regulates our blood circulation in the body. It lowers down the BP also, and especially for reducing the fats. You know, it is a short equation. If you take a spoon of honey in a glass of warm water and squeeze one lemon in it, take it daily, and you see the magical change. You can get rid of your fats. Then honey is used in many, many products, you know, in countries like China, which is always ahead of others in every aspect. Maybe it is negative or positive. They have even made the anti-wrinkle creams out of honey, and beeswax and so many other products, and which make your skin glow, and it is anti-aging also. So there are so many products which are made by by our little friends, and which are very, very well known. And honey, we all know that it is the first known sweetener on this earth. It cannot be synthesized artificially, though you get it from the market like that. But actually, it is the production by the bees only, by their hard work, by their secretions, and by the visits to various plants. Now we know that we have different kinds of honeys. If we have the honey of one kind, like citrus honey, or which we name like that, or brassica honey, it means that it is having a spectrum of single pollen grain only. And if it is multifloral, means that it has been visited by honeybees to various plants to collect their food. And various honeys, they are known for the different tastes, different flavors. Like in Himachal, we have apple honey, which is known. It has a very nice flavor and is very nutritional also. Similarly, in Himachal, we have a Plectranthus honey, which is made by that the plant is known as chichdi in the local language. It produces honey just like desi ghee. It is just water white, and it is very nutritional. If you take a spoon of that honey, you can imagine that what magic it will do the whole day. You'll feel so energetic. So that is the work our bees are doing for us, and which we have to respect in every sense. Now, when we go from Shimla or from any place we go towards Kullu Manali, there is a belt before we reach Sundarnagar, which is known for the mango trees. You know, the first produce of mangoes from this area were even presented to our late Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, because of its extra flavor and extra nutritional taste. But unfortunately, because of four-laning of the roads, hundreds of mango trees have been cut down. It is said that when we give water to the roots of mango tree, we are also giving water oblations to our ancestors. Amra sek pitri tarpanam. But now, you know, it was well said that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is today. Similarly with eucalyptus tree, one of the best sources of honey, has been just recklessly cut down. And moreover, with the environmental hazards also, the trees which were full of hundreds or thousands of flowers and equal number of the bees visiting to get the food, now the bees are just starving because of scanty flora on these trees, and very less trees also. It is said that when we destroy one tree, we are actually destroying 10 families. One tree has been equalized to 10 sons. Dasha kupa sama vapi, dasha vapi sama hridah, dasha hrida sama putro, dasha putro sama drumah. So this is ancient wisdom which needs to be implemented in the present scenario. Similarly, brassica honey is well known for its nutritional value. If you travel towards Shimla from Delhi, and when you reach Zirakpur, Chandigarh area, you will see that on both the sides of the road, there are big lines of the honeybee boxes in the brassica fields. Brassica, that is sarson ka saag, very well known everywhere. The bees, they make use of the brassica plants over there, and in association with that, the honey produced is of extra nutritional flavor, and it is very well known because of the pollination services done by the honeybees. So that is a matter of great proud for us also, because the transportation and all that has to be done to bring the bees over there in such a period, to make use of the flora which is available in any particular area. These studies are also very useful for women especially. I must say that divinity blossoms where women are honored. Yatra naryastu pujante ramante tatra devta. I would especially suggest my friends, my female friends, to start beekeeping also along with the work, whatever they are doing, because it doesn't need much of the land. You can just start it from your own home also. In this field, you know, the Nicola Bradbeer and Eva Crane, the big personalities, they are doing great job and have a big name at the global level. Why can't you also start it at your own homes? In the countries like China, Japan, Russia, you know, there is no house where beekeeping is not practiced in the kitchen gardens, not only to enhance and improve the vegetables and fruits, but also it gives a positive message also, that you work silently and let your success make noise. So big lessons which we have to learn from our little friends. Similarly, there are many more also, like Melilotus, Trifolium, then Principia utilis, Phagopyrum. So many plants. During our research investigations, we have found more than 500 plants from various parts of Himachal Pradesh. Jammu and Kashmir, which used to be the best honey sources, and we have categorized them into various parts like predominant honey resources, then medium honey resources, minor and important minor, depending upon the percentage of pollen. If the honey sample is having pollen grays more than 16 to 45%, then it is declared as predominant honey plant. Then if it is having 16 to 45%, then it is medium source, and less than 16%, it is known as is minor honey. So the studies, they really take a lot of time. It's a tedious process. First to go for honey collections in various parts, and then to survey the flora also of that area, bringing the honey samples to your lab and analyzing them, and then identification part. Most of the identification we have done in the NBRI Lucknow, and now the students from different parts of the country, they come to our lab for the identification work. So it's a great job done, and it needs really very depth of the studies is needed to find out the food of the honey, from where they collect their pollen and nectar, and what the government has to do to grow such plants so that the bees, they are not just left without their food. In Himachal Pradesh, one thing is very, very successful, that is managed crop pollination. Dr. Mattu also told you about this yesterday. Now, this practice has been very successfully adopted in Himachal Pradesh as compared to the other states of our country. Here, you know, the honeybee boxes, they are given on rental basis from horticulture department. Farmers, they take the hive boxes from there. They keep them in their orchards at the proper distances. They pay rent for it. And after the pollination work is done, after the flowering setting is done, then the bee boxes are returned. And you know, and we have studied also in various orchards of Himachal upper region, where apple is the main belt, that there is tremendous improvement and increase in the size, color and flavor of the apples, along with the number of the seeds that increases to a very, very large number. So the pollination services of honeybees, they rank very, very high as we compare it to other products that we get from this. Now, friends, one thing is very alarming, that our bees are just declining at a very, very alarming rate. You know, 50% of the bees are already off the globe. We used to worship nature. Very beautifully, it has been said in Gurvani, Pavan Guru Pani Pita Mata Tat Mahat, Divas Raat Due Dei Daya Khele Sakal Jagat, Change Aiyan Bure Aiyan Vache Taram Hadur, Karmi Apo Apne Ke Nede Ke Dur, which means that air is a guru, water is a father. Day and night are two kind nurtures, and the whole world plays in the lap of Mother Earth. Our good and bad deeds are being recorded, and accordingly we are given punishments. And friends, what more drastic punishment we'll have, what we are facing today across the globe. We never thought of this, that a small invisible microbe that's going to just shatter the whole world, which is washed off in just 20 seconds. But if it enters your body, it just tears it off. So many friends, so many relatives, we are just lost in 1 year. That's a very, very serious matter. So God is, this is all because of the human cruel activities. It is said that it is very auspicious to see your hands early in the morning. Karagre vasate Lakshmi, kar madhya cha Saraswatya, kar moolam Shri Govindam, prabhatam kar darshanam. That is, God has given us hand to perform auspicious activities. But on the contrary, we are going against this gift given by God to us. And the result we are all facing this time. Otherwise, in this conference used to be such a beautiful part, a beautiful event, when we sit face to face and watching sparkling faces of each other. You know, your energy level raises so high. But now we have to go to the technology side, and there's no other choice right now. Let's pray to God that we get rid of this, and at least lessons and all. And now what's the need of the day? The need of the day is we cannot do anything individually. Any expert cannot do it individually. Maybe horticulturists, agriculturists, farmers, policy makers, or experts from physics or chemistry or biotechnology. We all have to work together, joining hands in hands. So beautifully it is said that Sangacha Dhvam Samada Dhvam Samva Manasi Janatam Deva Bhagam Yatha Purvai Sanjananam Upasate. That is, let's walk together, let's talk together, let's sit together, let's think together. And together we can bring about the change which we want to see in this world. And we all know this world is getting impurified now, and purification is needed at a very, very high level. In our houses, also in puja, you know that a puja is never completed without Shanti mantra. And it is said that if we chant the Shanti mantra thrice a day, it brings peace and prosperity, not only in our houses, but also to our inner selves. So let us try chanting here also for all of us. Om Dyoh Shanti, Antariksham Shanti, Prithvi Shanti, Rapa Shanti, औषधय शांति, वनस्पतय शांति, विश्वदेवा शांति, ब्रह्मा शांति, रेवा शांति, रेधि शांति। हे ईश्वर, शांति प्रदान कीजिए इस त्रिभुवन में, जल में, थल में और गगन में, अंतरिक्ष, अग्नि और पवन में, जीव मात्र के तन में, मन में और जगत के कण कण में। शांति राष्ट्र निर्माण सृजन में, नगर ग्राम में और भवन में शांति प्रदान कीजिए प्रभु। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Let peace unto sky, peace to waters, peace to trees, peace unto gods, peace unto Brahma the creator, peace to flora, peace to fauna, peace to all humankind, and let all human beings imbibe, experience and feel that peace. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And here, friends, I would specially mention for my for dear students sitting here, that you all work very hard. The principle and message given by our honeybees, you know, that there is no substitute to hard work, and always respect your teachers. It is very well said by Kabir ji, Guru Govind dohu khade kaku lago paye, Balihari Guru apne Govind diyo milaye. If I meet God and Guru both together, I must pay respect to my Guru first, because it is only through the Guru that I could see God in the form of the knowledge and education he has imparted to us. And education, you know, that is the most real wealth we have. Na chor haryam, na raj haryam, na bhatra bhajyam, na cha bharakari. Vetrite vardate nityam vidya dhanam cha dhanam sarva pradhanam. The education is the only wealth that nobody can steal from us. Nobody can snatch it from us. It is the education, it is the wealth that just increases on sharing, and it keeps on improving as we share it with others, as if we spread it to the others. So thank you so much, all of you. And before I leave, I just want to tell that just try to replace your sugars by your honey, because you know 200 grams of honey is just as equally nutritional as 1 liter of milk, 1.5 liters of cream cheese, or 340 grams of meat, 10 eggs, or 8 oranges. So it depends upon us that we want our environment and our biodiversity to perish, or we want to cherish it by conserving it. So thank you so much. My special thanks to Mr. Dr. Chauhan, who has sent us an invite, and daily he's calling us, and all other organizers who have really worked so hard to make this conference success. I wish all the very best, and as Diwali is on the way, I wish very happy and auspicious Diwali to all of you. All of you are just invited to Shimla. Anytime you want to come there, you will find me and Dr. Matu standing there with the folded hands. Just give a call and we'll be there. Thank you so much. Wishing you all the very best, and thanks one and all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for intuitive and poetic session. We hopefully will find ways to save honeybees, and future generations will continue to enjoy honey like us. And we will surely look forward to visiting Shimla as well.
Thank you so much. And you always remember that 1 in 3 bites of food we eat that comes from honeybees. So whenever you sit to eat, just remember our little friends also. Thank you so much. God bless you. Okay.
Thank you. Now it is time for tea break, and we will continue our session after 11:45 a.m. So do rejoin us. Thank you.